Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. So today I decided to do something a bit different. Rollercoaster Tycoon and Friends, the Discord community that I'm in as well, has another multiplayer squares round, and I was kind of inspired to join this challenge as well. Now, during this plots build challenge, basically, we're tasked to build something that has the theme of cars. So not the movie Cars per se, but just cars in general, to try and kind of incorporate that into a build. So I had this idea of making a Mario Kart ride, because of course Universal Japan is actually building this ride at this very moment. And while I don't want to try to make a copy of that, I just wanted to try and make my own twist on that idea, because I personally really like Mario Kart, really enjoy playing it. And I figured it could be kind of nice to try and see what I could do with that. Now, for this ride idea, I decided to go with a slot car type of ride. So this would be something like Test Track or Radiator Springs Racers, which are both Disney rides, and they basically, well, if you know the toy slot cars, that's basically what the system is like as well. So you'll have a vehicle that goes into a slot in the track. And underneath the road, basically, there will be coaster track to guide the actual vehicle and to accelerate it and, decelerate it, whatever you want to do with it. So that's kind of the ride system that I'm going to be going for here. And I think it's a really interesting ride system that is pretty hard to actually build in Rollercoaster Tycoon 2, especially to get that slot in there. It's going to be pretty challenging. But we'll give it a shot. Now, if you want to have a look at this in yourself, you can actually join the RCNF Multiplayer Squares server when you boot up OpenRCT2. And if you want to join this challenge as well, you can. Just make sure to join the Rollercoaster Tycoon and Friends Discord community. And you can ask permission from Broxier to join this challenge. And then you can get started building if you have any ideas to do with this team. So here I'm building the entrance, and my idea for the entrance was basically to kind of create like this racetrack tribune is basically what I was trying to go for here. So it's very different from what we see at Universal Japan, which will have a facade that's themed to Bowser's Castle, basically. But I didn't want it to copy that like I said at the start. So instead I wanted to try and focus on something different, make it my own interpretation of this sort of ride. So for this I looked at some pictures of Mario's circuit from Mario Kart, and kind of try and base this tribune of that as well. Now there are some cool, interesting ideas that people are doing here in this server right now. Like Onterra, for example, was initially gonna start making Radiator Springs Racers, or at least a small version of that, because obviously these squares are pretty limited in terms of the space that you get to build in. But he couldn't really make that work, so I was kind of thinking like, oh, that's a bit of a shame, because I really like the ride type, basically. So I was like, maybe I can put my own twist on it. So that's kind of why I came up with the idea to do Mario Kart myself instead. Because Onterra has now decided to do something different for his plot, and is instead trying to create a stunt show, which is really quite cool. We have stunt shows like these at quite a few parks, especially parks that are kind of focused on movies. And I think Hollywood Studios is probably the one of the best examples of a park that does, or at least did, such a stunt show. I don't think they have that anymore. I'm not quite sure, actually. But at the Walt Disney Studios in Disneyland Paris, they do still have this stunt show. Actually, they no longer have this stunt show. It is actually most likely going to be removed. And it's no longer playing right now. But they did have it until very recently. Sorry about that. Things are changing a lot right now in theme parks, so it's a bit hard to keep track of all these things. Now, with such a small space, it is pretty interesting to actually build a dark ride in that. it is very challenging, especially if you want to get a lot of track in there. So I'm gonna be relying on multiple levels for the track and kind of try and go over certain parts, which is really quite challenging to get that to look right, because obviously when you're building a dark ride and you want people to be able to see all the scenes, you need to make sure that if something is on a lower level than something else, that people can still actually see that properly, you know? So, yeah, that's going to be pretty challenging, but you'll see how we can try and do that in just a little bit. But for now, I wanted to get the station in here, and that is probably the bit that just takes the most amount of space, because it is going to be a little bit limited in terms of what you can actually do with it, because obviously you have to need to get the queue in there, you have to get the exit path in there as well. So there are just a lot of things that you just have to have in there, basically, in this small amount of space that you have right over here. So it was pretty challenging to kind of, you know, fit a theme around that and kind of to dress that up. But I think in the end it works out pretty well. We are going, like, at the station, it's basically like a generic racing track. I think a Mario circuit or a Luigi circuit are probably the best examples of that. Actually, I should look that up because I'm not quite sure if it is Luigi circuit. Let me really quickly Google that while we're live. Yeah, Luigi circuit, for example, is another good example of just one of these Mario Kart circuits that's just pretty plain, pretty basic, but really just a racetrack. So that's kind of the theme that I was going for this very first area. But the idea with the ride is that as you're going through it, there are going to be different kind of circuits that you're going through. Different kind of tracks, basically. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm going for. So at this point, I wasn't really quite sure which other racetracks I really wanted to get in there. I did have a few ideas, of course. You know, I like the desert tracks. I like the Luigi's Mansion track. It's also very cool. Of course, Rainbow Road as well. I mean, these are just the obvious ones that you have to get in there, which I think are probably some of the most iconic for Mario Kart just in general. So yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. Now, one hard thing about the slot cars, like I said earlier, is to try and make them visually look alright. Because with a real slot car type ride system, you'll have just a flat floor basically within the center, just a slot where the vehicle is attached to basically. But getting such a small slot in this track is pretty hard. You can't really do that with custom scenery. So wasn't really sure yet. I'm gonna look into that in the next episode probably, because right now I don't really have a solution for that. But if you do have an idea for how to actually make something like that work, do let me know in the comments, because I'd be quite interested in figuring out a way to make that look good. So here I'm creating another stand basically for well, probably for a lot of shy guys to sit at and look at the racers, just to really get that feeling from Luigi's circuit over here. And I think you can see that with the pattern I'm creating here as well, with the green and white blocks basically. Really, you know, just shows that this is probably Luigi's circuit that you're starting in right now. I'll get some other utility buildings around that as well that I think fit with a racetrack really well. Now, one of the hardest things about this ride is going to be that it is actually going to be dueling. So there will be two tracks right next to each other, and these vehicles are going to be racing against each other. Now, as you will see at the end of the episode, I mostly turn in one direction. So that also means that one of the vehicles is actually going to be ahead of the other one, naturally. So it's quite a challenge to try and get them to catch up again. And the way I'm going to be doing that is using the lift hills. So I set the lift hill speed to really quite high, to 24 kilometers an hour basically, which for a ride like this is going to be pretty fast. And then I can basically remove the lift hill from sections where one of the vehicles needs to be slower than the other, just so they can catch up again. And just like that, we can kind of play with who's in front all the time, basically. So I think that will be really quite fun to get that, really that racing aspect, the competitive aspect into the ride as well. So you can really visually see that when you're looking at the ride, going around the track as well. So yeah, that's going to be pretty fun, I think. Yeah, another thing. This is custom scenery. I have not done that on my channel yet. I mostly play with no custom scenery. The reason being is that custom scenery is really quite time consuming, actually. Which is also why I sped up this time-lapse a lot more than I would usually do. Usually my time-lapse speed is 800%, well, right now it is 1000% instead. Just because you're spending a lot more time getting all these details in there, and a lot of the pieces are going to be a lot smaller. So if you want to create a wall or something like that, you just have to place a lot more pieces, and that's going to take a lot more time. So that's also why I don't really want to do some custom scenery for a larger project either, because it's just gonna take me too much time, and if it takes too much time, I'm not gonna be too motivated to work on that anymore in the long run. So instead, I sometimes like to do some custom scenery with these challenges where you really just have a very limited amount of space. You get a theme that you have to start with and that you can kind of build around. Because once you have some limitations in there, it's okay to build with custom scenery for me, because you know you have these limitations in place to stop you from having to keep building forever, basically. So yeah, and I must say, like, these multiplayer crash challenges have been one of the most valuable thing that I have done in order to kind of enhance my Rollercoaster Tycoon building skills. Whether it be in no custom scenery or custom scenery as well. It really just helps to have some limitations when you're building. So that is one of the tips that I can give you. Like, if you're trying to improve yourself and improve your building in Rollercoaster Tycoon 2, just join some of these challenges. You can do them on Rollercoaster Tycoon and Friends. You can do them on the Dirklunk server as well. Just really whatever you like, whatever works for you. Just try them out, because they'll usually have a theme that you have to go with. Sometimes have like restrictions for what kind of rides you can place as well. And those limitations, like, you might not really think that this is the case, but the most creative solutions actually come from limitations in the end. So that's really quite interesting to think about, and keep that in mind when you're actually trying to do something yourself. Because in the end, when there's just an empty flat map in front of you, it's very hard to get started. It's very hard to keep going with that in the long run, basically. Because you're just looking at an empty slate and you have no clue what to do with that. However, if you get some limitations to work with, then you really get these creative juices flowing. And then the next tip is just look up reference images. Like, whenever I'm building something, I always have reference images that I'm almost copying. I'm not saying that I'm actually copying whatever I see on the pictures, but if you have a cool picture, like a screenshot from Mario Kart, try to create what you see on those screenshots. You'll be surprised by how challenging it already is to try and copy all these different elements that you see in those screenshots. But that does actually teach you how to use all these scenery elements in a convincing way to get, some kind of idea across. So really, don't be ashamed of using reference material when you are trying to build something yourself either, because everyone needs some kind of reference material. Your brain isn't suddenly gonna come up with wonderful things. Because usually you might have some wonderful things in your mind, but actually translating that to, a park or something like that, well, that's a whole different story. So yeah, there you go. Some free building advice from Ollie414. But yeah, really, don't try to push yourself to always be as unique as you might want to be. Because in the end, you're going to be unique by starting off with something that might not be as unique as you would like it to be. So yeah, don't really worry about that too much. So yeah, long story short, try out some of these challenges if you want to improve your building. It's really going to help, or at least it really helped me. And I think it can help for a lot of more people as well. You do need to, kind of be okay with getting some criticism, because obviously people are gonna rate you on these challenges. In the end, people will have to vote on these plots, and they might also share their opinions with you as well in a small review format. So just keep in mind that that is also a thing that's part of these challenges. So if you're not really into that, or you don't really like that sort of stuff, then, you know, maybe not do these kind of challenges. But if you're okay with that, I can definitely recommend them. Now, as you can see, I just built another part of the ride, and that is gonna be like the desert temple type of area. And over there, I wanted this turn. Yeah, basically like a banked turn for the racetrack, because I think that would be really quite cool. It's gonna be really quite intense. And you will be able to go just a little bit faster than you might otherwise be able to in those sections. So I think that's going to be a really cool part, one of the fastest parts of the actual ride, I think, in the end as well. But we'll see how that turns out. But for now, that's kind of the idea. So you're going to race past that really quite fast. It's going to be really quite fun. And the banking is just going to make it a lot more exciting, I think, as well. And that's also a really cool thing that these types of rides can do. Because in the end, underneath the track, it's really just roller coaster track. If you're interested in learning more about that, by the way, there are some good videos on YouTube that show you how a ride like Test Track actually works. And they actually have some pictures of like, or some diagrams from what it looks like underneath the track, basically. Because it's really quite an interesting system that is very versatile and can do a lot of stuff. I'd say it's one of the most ideal dark ride type of ride systems, basically. It's really quite fun. Now, another way that this type of ride system is being used is using a motion base as well. Now, you can see this at the Indiana Jones ride that you can find at Disneyland Anaheim. That ride also uses a slot car type system, and then also has a motion, well, almost like a motion simulator on top of that, and that's where what the ride vehicle, what the ride vehicle sits on as well. Another example of that is Countdown to Extinction, which is now called Dinosaur, I think. That is actually the same layout as the Indiana Jones ride, so it's, well, also the same exact same system as well. These are really quite nice rides. I really quite enjoy them myself, and they make it a little bit harder to see where you're actually going to be going. That makes it a little bit more exciting, I think, because the actual, track system isn't really that much in view, which I quite like about a good dark ride, basically. Now, here I'm really trying to copy that overworld Mario type of feel. So I created these small hills that you obviously see in the Mario games a lot. And here I'm using some of these roof pieces to just kind of finish up the slope. And the idea here is that underneath this slope is going to be one of the probably some kind of maintenance area, but also one of the evacuation hallways, basically. So that's just a really, a fun little bit that I thought about while I was building this. That would actually be quite logical in terms of the logistics of this building. So you can see me having placed a door there on the outside as well, just to make sure that if an evacuation needs to happen, then people can actually get out of there as well. Now, here I'm just building another building on the other side of the station. So the station is going to be a pretty large part of the actual building, I think. And so I just want to make sure that all sides were properly themed, because people are going to be queuing inside of this hall as well. So I just wanted to make sure that there would be enough to look at. Now, during the ride itself, the direction that people are going to view in or going to see things in is going to be a lot more focused, because that's mostly going to be orchestrated by the direction that the vehicle is going to be traveling in. However, when you're inside of a queue, people will look all around them, obviously. So you need to make sure that on every single side, the theming is actually going to be correct. So now I'm creating another section, which I initially wanted to theme as a desert. More larger, just to kind of enlarge the desert part, basically. But I quickly realized that I would probably want to theme this to the Luigi's Mansion instead. And I'm really quite glad that I went with that decision, because in the end, it transitions really nicely from another idea that I had. So right now, part of the track is on the second floor. And my idea to get that down again is by using the, I think it's like the Waluigi Orario ski slope track, which is one of my favorite tracks personally. So I want to make a section where you are actually going down the ski slope. So you'll see me do that in a second, and I think that is a really nice transition to the haunted house, which then can go over into the desert section, basically. So these sections are going to be really quite short in the end, but it's just going to be fun and recognizable for the guests that are actually going to be riding this, as they will probably come across one of their favorite tracks while they are riding it. So I think that's going to be a really quite a fun experience for the people sitting on this ride. Now, I had the idea of kind of making these ghost figures, the Boos from Mario. However, I wasn't quite sure how to do that, so in the end I just went with some decorations for the for Luigi's Mansion instead. But yeah, I mean, I do want to get a few more figures in here. However, it's okay, I think, to not have a lot of figures inside of this ride, because obviously those are pretty hard to kind of get across. So instead, I think it's probably better to focus on some of the smaller details and fill it up with that instead. Now, since we are using custom scenery, one thing that is really quite fun that we can do with this is, create a bit more details on the backstage bits. Now, there are not going to be a lot of backstage bits on this specific ride, because obviously the space is very limited. But in between scenes where we have some dead space that we're not going to be using, I do place some kind of framework, basically, just to kind of show that the scenery is being held up by something. I think that's really quite fun. I'm definitely going to try and do that more along the way, basically, as we are not going to be finishing this ride in this very episode. But yeah, that's kind of the idea. So yeah, here you can see me building the ski slope, and this is going to be a section where the vehicles are going to be really quite fast. And this was a bit of an issue because the white track basically was way ahead of the green track at this point, both because of the speed and because the distance that the white track has to travel is a lot less. So to fix that, at the bottom I placed some brakes and basically made the white brake brake a lot more than the green brake does, basically. So yeah, that way we can kinda, get them to a good speed. Now the brakes do brake a bit too hard, perhaps, but yeah, let's just ignore that for now, because there is not a lot of options to kind of solve that, because we can only place these brakes on straight track, sadly. But with this ride system, you would actually be able to brake anywhere, I do believe. Because in the end, it is going to be driven by an electric motor, I think, on the ride vehicle itself. And that means that using some track sensors and things like that, you can actually control the speed of each vehicle individually and also very gradually. And you do not need to rely on features on the track itself to accelerate or decelerate, basically. So that's really quite a unique feature, I think. That's really quite fun. Now, this final section that you see over here is going to be Rainbow Road, because it's going to be really quite a long stretch, so I figured it would be fun to go a bit faster here. So yeah, what else will fit with something like that than Rainbow Road? So yeah, we're going to make a small start on that in this very episode, but we're not going to be finishing it just yet. We'll do that some other day. Because right now I'm gonna be leaving to Europa Park next week from Monday to Thursday. So when I get back, I'll probably make another episode of Magic Towers again. But for now, I figured I would really quickly finish up this video instead, just to get some content out of there for this very weekend. And then next week, hopefully, we can pick things up with Magic Towers again. I do also have another video, just sitting there waiting to be published, basically, and that's going to be a making of Magic Towers. So in that video, I'm just going to be showing you guys how I'm making these Magic Towers Resorts episodes. Maybe you're interested in that, probably not, but I figured it would just be some fun content that I could post online on my channel. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you had a good time. If you have any questions about this project, do let me know in the comments down below. And make sure to join Rollercoaster Tycoon and Friends and my own Discord, Magic Towers Plaza, as well. Anyways, see you next time. Bye bye.